Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of the Sid Ammar Show. I hope you had a chance to check out our first episode released on August 12, titled Traditional Values in a Hostile World. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. My social media handle is at SidAmmar316, so make sure you subscribe to me on YouTube. Today's episode is focused on education, and specifically on Alberta's education system, as I'm going to share with you an email sent out by the Alberta Parents Union on Wednesday, August 16th, and tell you a little bit about that organization. But first, there is an ideological battle taking place in education all across Canada, the United States, and Australia, essentially the entire Western Hemisphere. And that includes both K-12, kindergarten to grade 12, and the post-secondary education systems. Now, I graduated high school in the year 2000, and from what I've seen and heard, the K-12 world is completely different now compared to what it was in the 90s. It wasn't perfect before, but it is much worse now. Apparently, they don't even teach cursive writing anymore. We used to call that handwriting. Nobody talks about home economic classes anymore. Children are not as good as memorization as they used to be. Math skills are worse. We don't even have financial literacy training, which is something that should be taught at the high school level. And to top it all off, they are not making the best decisions or not equipping the children to make the best decisions that they can make when it comes time to consider post-secondary education. In society nowadays, all we do is push people to attend colleges and universities just so they can get a piece of paper behind their name and graduate with massive debt and loans that will take years to pay off. We've tricked kids into thinking that they are not smart or somehow not special, or that they can't succeed without a university degree. But this is complete nonsense. I remember my high school English teacher complaining that only 10% of our society goes to university. Well, the more I think about it, I start to think, does it really matter? Why this drive to specifically place kids in universities? Why not also teach them business skills and how to become an entrepreneur or how to open up their own businesses? Why not teach them how to navigate the regulatory environment? Why not encourage them to get into the trades? We need to stop pushing people into fields not meant for them. We need to stop lying to our children that they can't succeed without a university degree. This is part of the problem. Just as much as we need people in engineering, the sciences, medicine, education, and just as much as we need doctors and surgeons, we also need people in the trades. We need farmers. We need family-owned farms, not farms owned by Bill Gates. We need plumbers and electricians. We need technicians. We need IT specialists. We need cooks and restaurant owners. We need garbage men to pick up the trash for the city. We need construction workers to build roads and buildings. We need people who do landscaping work. We need barbers and hairstylists. We need janitors. You don't necessarily need a university degree for every single one of these positions. The Lebanese politician and philosopher Gamal Jumblat once said that the university degree is in itself, let me correct that, quote, the university degree is not in itself indicative of knowledge, end quote. So this entire drive to make everyone equal, which is in itself a Marxist talking point, is wreaking havoc on our society. You cannot force equality of outcome. You can only implement equality of opportunity. There are many well-off, successful individuals and entrepreneurs with no post-secondary training or education, and these people are extremely rich today. This is well known. What we need to do is start focusing on people's strengths moving forward, rather than their weaknesses. Children will often show you what their interests are. Don't just blindly force them to become what you want them to become. We often make the critical mistake of trying to live through the children. I was once told that this Lebanese guy got his doctor's or lawyer's degree, don't remember exactly what it was, When he graduated, he went to his father and handed him the degree and told him, "This is for you. I don't want this." Then he went on to do something else. Wow. And this happens more often than you think. I've heard countless times that people went into professions just to make their parents happy. Think about this. He just did it to make his father happy. So how much time and money and years and effort was wasted when he could have gone into something else? Another program. This happens quite a bit. It's done at the subconscious level. As parents, we tend to want to live out our unattained dreams through our children. And this is dangerous. If your child likes reading and displays incredible writing skills, then perhaps he's well suited to become an author or a journalist. Don't push him to become an engineer. If your child is a knowledgeable debater and uses well-constructed sentences, then perhaps he's well suited to become a lawyer or a theologian. Don't push him to become a doctor. If your child is a thinker, perhaps philosophy is his calling. But whatever the case, let him or her come to their own conclusion. All they need is guidance. What I'm saying is encourage your children to discover their strengths and use that to help them determine which careers they should aim for. When your children hit grade 10, start to help them develop a plan, a business plan for when they graduate. By the time they are in grade 12, they can then make the decision with your guidance as to whether or not it best suits their skill set to go to university for a 4-year degree, or college for a 2-year diploma, or a technical institute to learn a trade, or even something else. Start their own business right out of school, but don't force them into it. I can even help you out with that at Taj Life Coach, and I am a life coach, so feel free to reach out to me. There should also be a societal focus on the high costs of post-secondary education and on the amount of useless courses they jam into degree programs. It really makes you feel like they are running a money-making scheme. I still remember many of the totally useless courses we were forced to take when I was in post-secondary. As a matter of fact, many programs could be slimmed down and leaned up, which would result in tremendous cost savings for students and getting the program completed in a lesser amount of time. I mean, it's common sense. Why do we need all of these state-of-the-art, super expensive buildings and oversized classrooms, especially with all of today's technological marvels and advances? Nowadays, you could split your time between Zoom and in-person learning to achieve a healthy balance. You would think that the overall cost per student should drop as the number of students per class increases, especially as we progress in technological development. And what about all those crazy, expensive, lucrative textbooks that are revised every few years with barely anything of worth added and then pressuring students to purchase the newer editions? Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody used to talk about it in school, but nothing is done about it. I'd really like to see a national study commissioned to determine exactly how much money is being wasted at the post-secondary level and what we can do to streamline and reduce the costs of higher education. We also shouldn't forget that our universities are now inculcated with left-wing Marxist ideologies and professors, while at the same time academic freedoms are being curtailed. The current ruling intellectual elite do not care about opinions or points of view that contradict their worldview. They claim to honor freedom of speech and thought and all that, yet they send a lynch mob after you if you dare to step out of line. Professors and teachers get fired for expressing skepticism about climate change and evolution, as 2 examples. Does this really contribute to critical thinking? In the August 2nd, 2022 edition of the New York Times, Nick Burns critiqued America's universities. He writes, quote, "To put it another way, what's most dangerous for the health of America's intellectual elite is not that most professors have similar cultural tastes and similar liberal politics. That will probably always be the case. It's that the campus setup makes it easy for them to forget that reasonable people often don't share their outlook," end quote. Now, one of the best ways to implement a shift is to focus on our young. It's absolutely critical that the government focus on kindergarten to grade 12 education. Our children are our future. We have a new government recently elected, so hopefully they will be able to do that. As parents, do you know what your children are being taught in the schools? Why is there a targeted attempt to take away parental rights when it comes to your children's education? Who is behind this? What force or ideology is behind taking the children away from the ultimate guidance of the parents? I've been approached by many parents deeply concerned with what their children are learning in the schools. Some are completely removing their children and homeschooling them. Some keep moving their children from school to school. Just look at all this additional stress and concern and worry being added to the lives of families already overburdened with working multiple jobs, the high costs of goods, high interest rates, and excessive inflation. Now, that's a whole other issue that I will be discussing in the future. But it's something to think about. We are overstressed and we are overworked as a society. Not enough time is being made for people to spend with their families. We're always thinking about our next bill to pay. We're always thinking about, if we have enough money to support and provide our family. And nowadays, we have the additional stress of making sure that our children are not being corrupted in the schools. So it's actually quite encouraging to see the number of parents that are privately pushing back on the modern state of the education system. So this leads me into the email I received the other day regarding the mandate letters provided to the ministers of education and advanced education. The email is dated Wednesday, August 16th, and is from the Alberta Parents Union. I'm going to read the email to you, and note that I'm not a member or a representative of the Alberta Parents Union, but I am on the email list, and I do like what they are putting out, and this should get more exposure. And a lot of people go out and vote, but they don't actually, once they vote, they don't actually go and see what is going on. They don't actually read the documents that are published. And, this may be helpful to those who have no other means of getting the information. Now, before I go to that email, I'm going to read through the Alberta Parents Union About page on their website just to give you an idea of what they're about. So I do encourage parents to check them out. So www.albertaparentsunion.ca. And on the About page, they say, the Alberta Parents Union is an organization of Alberta parents advocating for the best possible education for all Alberta students, whether that be public, separate, francophone, alternative, charter, independent, or home education. We are parents and also grandparents, guardians, and even some teachers of K-12 students all across our province. We aim to empower parents with the information and tools that they need to ensure every child in Alberta achieves their full potential. As a parent, tell me, do you disagree with any of that? How can you disagree with that? They go on to state that we believe, in point form, that children are not one size fits all, and thus the education system should not be one size fits all either. Agreed. That the Alberta advantage in education is largely due to the broad array of choices in education accessible to ordinary Albertans. I agree with that. That every student in Alberta should have the ability to access this broad array of choice in education. I agree with that. That no one person, system, philosophy has all of the good ideas, and that we must therefore listen to and engage a wide pluralistic array of views. I totally agree with that. How can you not agree with that? And they're hitting on a good point here. There is no one system on this planet that has all of the good ideas. It's usually a mix. And that in the end, our K-12 education system should serve the students in it first, not the adults employed by it. And this is driving home another point. We need to do what is best for the children. And then they talk about, as an organization, we are only as strong as our supporters, so we need you to join today and become a part of our efforts. So I do like what I'm seeing with the Alberta Parents Union. I do keep up on the emails, and I do encourage you to check them out. So let us head over to the email. Once again, it was sent out on Wednesday, August 16. And I'll read from the email, and then occasionally I'll add, one or two points. The email is titled Fresh Mandates, Fresh Opportunities. And it starts off as, the Minister of Education has been given his marching orders. And here's the details. Let me explain. The Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, issues letters to each of her cabinet ministers outlining what she expects them to accomplish over the course of this electoral term. So Danielle Smith was recently elected to a 4-year term. These are called mandate letters that she gives to the ministers. It goes on to state, parents were eagerly awaiting the mandate letters for the Ministry of Education to ensure that the promises made during the campaign surrounding school choice were reflected in the priorities of the government. After all, parents are the real experts in our own kids. And our voices are critical to make sure our kids are the real focus of K-12 education policy. Let's take a look at the highlights of the letters, and then we'll break the most important items down further. So she sent a mandate letter to the Minister of Education and to the Minister of Advanced Education. Minister of Education looks after K-12. Minister of Advanced Education is, obviously the post-secondary level. So the mandate letter calls for Minister Dimitrios Nicolaides. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The mandate letter calls for the minister to, and they put this out in point form, promote greater choice in education, to review the role of parent school councils, to explore ways parents can provide more input into school policies and learning options, significantly increase the number of schools and communities that need them, exploring incentives for frontline education staff in underserved areas of the province, address learning loss and the increasing complexity of learning needs, review and strengthen program unit funding, PUF, and I'll explain to you what that means in a second. The next point is to continue to implement the K-12 curriculum, the updated curriculum, and then implement more basic life skills and financial literacy training in high school. This is something I've been waiting for a long time. And I wish they had it back when we were in high school. And I did mention earlier that financial literacy should be in high schools. You should be learning how to balance a budget in high school. You should be learning how to save money in high school. You should even learn a little bit about opening a business. This can be taught to people in grade 12. I mean, most people in grade 12 are around, 16, 17 years old. They start working when they're 15. So they should have 1 or 2 years of experience working part-time by the time they're in grade 12. They're starting to migrate into the real world. So we should teach them more basic life skills. I'm totally on board with that, as well as financial literacy training in high school. Now, we mentioned review and strengthen program unit funding, PUF. So what does that stand for? So program unit funding, and this is from the Alberta government website. Program unit funding, PUF, is provided to school authorities for early childhood services, ECS, children with severe disabilities, delays, who require additional support beyond that offered in a regular ECS program. PUF is provided for individualized programming that meets the educational needs of children with severe disabilities or delays who are at least 2 years, 6 months of age, and less than 6 years of age on September 1st. PUF may be paid for a maximum of 3 years for each eligible child. So that is what PUF is. Now, think about it for a second. These points that I mentioned, how can you disagree with any one of these points? Interestingly, and it goes on to say, interestingly, the mandate letter given to the Minister of Advanced Education, Rajan Sauhani, also contained plenty of calls for extensive shared responsibilities for K-12, including, first point, all manner of ways to strengthen pathways for K-12 students into skilled trades. And this is something I was trying to focus on earlier. In addition to universities and colleges, let's also focus on skilled trades, because we do need people in the skilled trades. You need your electricians, you need your carpenters, you need your plumbers. We can't function without that. Who's building the homes? Promotion of skilled, second point, promotion of skilled trades and professions at younger ages. I'm on board with that. Third point, create an expedited teaching certificate for instructors with specialized skills. Totally agree with that. So they say here that's a lot. So let me quickly focus on the handful of issues that most require our advocacy as parents. First section is titled Parent School Councils and Parent Input. It says, this is obviously one of the central points of advocacy the Alberta Parents Union exists to advance. Far too many parents feel there is no real way for their input to be heard on the issues that are most important to them in their kids' education. The Alberta Parents Union has been the only organization shining a light on the massive problems with the Alberta School Councils Association, ASCA. ASCA has run a massive advertising campaign with the Alberta Teachers Association, ATA, against independent schools. They have advocated for the abolition of charter schools. They have consistently represented the interests of the ATA in whose offices they reside over those of the parents they supposedly represent. Fortunately, the government appears to be open to our advocacy here, even while other prominent parent organizations have critiqued it. We will be advocating for alternative organizations to ASCA to perform the same functions, and for local parent councils, the majority of which do great and important work in service to families, to be able to choose the groups with which they prefer to affiliate. I want to briefly segue to another email that was sent out by the Alberta Parents Union. This one was sent out back on January 25, 2023, in which they actually go in depth and explain the difference between the different school systems. You know, there's public schools, Catholic schools, Francophone schools, alternative program schools, charter schools, independent schools, funded home education, and unfunded home education. A lot of people are not aware of all the differences, right? So I'm just going to give a little explanation to each one. And they did explain this here back in January. So a public school is a school that's based on a district line, and students are residentially assigned to a public school district. Within the district, students are also assigned to a particular school. but Alberta has open enrollment, meaning that a public school must accept enrollment from outside the district if they have the capacity to do so. And these public schools are governed by elected school boards, for which the voter turnout, they say here, is unfortunately low. So Catholic schools, they're guaranteed in the Alberta Act, the province's founding document, in order to protect minority rights. Like public schools, Catholic schools are based on district lines. Catholic students are residentially assigned to a Catholic school district. Within the district, students are also assigned to a particular school, but Alberta has open enrollment, meaning that a Catholic school must accept enrollment from outside the district if they have the capacity to do so. And Catholic schools are governed by elected school boards, okay? And again, it states that the voter turnout is low. You have Francophone schools, which are guaranteed in the Alberta Act to protect minority rights. And Francophone schools have a mandate specifically to preserve the French language and culture and are intended to provide an education to children who speak French at home. You have alternative program schools, which are schools that are governed by a nonprofit society and a school division, though the nonprofit society can choose which school division they will be affiliated with. You have charter schools, and they're schools that are governed by a nonprofit society with a board made up of parents that was formed for the purpose of creating a charter school. This nonprofit society must apply to Alberta Education to receive a charter to operate as a charter school, and this charter is renewed by Alberta Education every 5 years. And like every school in Alberta, charter schools must follow the Alberta curriculum and schedule of learning outcomes. You have independent schools, which are schools that are governed by a nonprofit society and must be members of the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta. They, again, have to follow the Alberta curriculum. You have funded home education, which means the education is provided by a parent or a guardian under the supervision of a school authority, either an associate board or an associate independent school. And then you have unfunded home education, which is provided by a parent or guardian without the supervision of a school authority. So that was just a little summary of the different types of schools school options or school choice options that exist. So my question is, why are some people advocating for the abolition of charter schools when charter schools are, they do have to follow the curriculum? What are they worried about? The next section, going back to the August email from last week, next section is titled Greater Choice in Education. And it states, since we have referenced ASCA's opposition to choice in education, this is a good place to make our pitch for it. Children are not one size fits all, so their education can't be either. Educational pluralism drives innovation and keeps children at the center of the system's focus. Genuine and robust choices make the public education system stronger. No family should be forced into having their values undermined by their school. I agree with that. Since Albertans have a great diversity of values, this can only be addressed by great diversity within the K-12 education system. We will be advocating for legal recognition and funding of high innovation learning pods, as well as a host of regulatory reforms removing barriers to new and growing schools of choice, including in rural areas. Next section is titled Curriculum. And they say this one's quick. We will be advocating for genuine, accessible, in-person consultation of parents before any more of the curriculum is rolled out. Then it goes on to the next section, expedited teaching certificates. It says, no one wants less qualified professional teachers to drive out more qualified professional teachers. And this is not the aim of this initiative, but we have the opportunity and a growing necessity to introduce more education and skills into our classrooms. For instance, Alberta has a desperate need for more young people in the skilled trades. The construction trades alone already have a record high 800,000 vacancies, and 21% of the vocation is expected to retire by 2030. So think about that. There's 800,000 vacancies in the construction trades. It's why so much of the education and advanced education mandate letters focus on this problem. We currently have a bridge to teacher program to attract highly skilled tradespeople to Alberta classrooms, but it requires 2 years of training. How many tradespeople, with the demand for their services higher than ever, are going to take 2 years to qualify for a teaching certificate? We thought that question was rhetorical, but Minister Nicolaides had the answer. Only 20 per year. Only 20 per year. Likewise, the increased popularity of classical education is yielding a higher demand for teachers with training in the classics, and especially Greek and Latin. Many eminently qualified teachers want to come to Alberta from other provinces and even other countries until they find out that, unlike their current location, Alberta has no accelerated path for them to prove their classroom qualifications. As frankly as we can put this, our current problem is that a literal rocket scientist is considered 2 years less qualified to teach middle school science than a C student with a bachelor's of education in music education. To put it mildly, neither research nor practical experience supports such a preference. We will be advocating for these pressing classroom needs to be filled as quickly as possible, without a reduction in the quality and professionalism of Alberta teachers. So interesting that they mention here that that's why, the mandate letters, focus on the skilled trades. And this is why I mentioned earlier that, we don't need to just emphasize university and university degrees. There's diplomas out there available. There's technical institutes. There's the trades. There's so many options available. And there's work available as well. So that is, I believe, the final section. And then they go on to a we need you section. So thousands of parents, demanded the Alberta Parents Union because the K-12 education system has become too big, too bureaucratic, and distant from regular parents for us to make our voices heard. Groups like ASCA, which were supposed to help bridge that gap, have instead devoted themselves to advancing policies that favor the teacher union. Parents are the only voices that can keep the K-12 education system focused on the kids it's meant to serve, rather than the adults employed by it, whether that be the politicians, the educrats, or the union bosses. So I do encourage you to look up the Alberta Parents Union and to become a member of it. And they're sending out excellent information, and they're an organization we should be looking at closely, especially as concerned parents. And I'm sure after this podcast, quite a few parents will go and look into the Alberta Parents Union. In closing, parents, start taking back control over what your children are learning. Develop a relationship with the teachers. Go to parent-teacher meetings. When your kid comes home after school, ask them to show you what they learned in school. If you're concerned about something, talk to the teachers, talk to the principals, talk to the administrators, talk to everybody, and encourage others to do the same. Get involved. And now is the time to do it more than ever before.